Hello everybody. So this video is entitled Enphase stock. Enphase stock is back. It's making a comeback because of AI. And is it all hype or is it real? Is my question. And of course, I'm asking this question about the underlying business. I'm not asking this question about the stock price because sure enough, the stock price, even though on Friday it dropped 18%, sure enough, it had bubble-like behavior, essentially doubling in a matter of 3 weeks in the back of this announcement. Enphase releasing in early April, of course, their quarterly presentation, quarterly earnings, as well as a new presentation about SST for data center and the launch of the Enphase IQ SST, being of course these little modules that would be put in data centers, and that would allow for next generation data center, specifically next generation AI data center that require on and off switching. So Enphase pivoting into the transformer business, getting into the transformer business, and getting in this business with its usual architecture, which is it has manufacturing lines for these microinverters, and it just manufactures them like crazy at a crazy speed, right? It's a change from the bulky string inverters, which are manufactured with industry, with a lot of manual labor in industrial plants. You know, those old, big, bulky SMA inverters, Fronius inverters, versus, of course, the microinverter, which is consumer electronics. It's manufactured like an iPhone. It's just a PCB board, and you just print them out at a crazy breakneck speed, and so that's how they've approached everything about the business, whether it's microinverters for solar panels, whether it's microinverters for chargers, for batteries. And the key of the Enphase business is to use these microinverters everywhere. And so they have kind of this platform business where they bring a solution just by increasing the count of microinverters, which are these black little boxes that kind of look like giant iPhone chargers. I guess in a way you could say that. Now, one key question, I have not followed this stock in a long time. You may remember I sold this stock in the 70s, and I sold the stock in 2024. Now that I recall, 2024 is when I sold, or a while back. Why did I sell it? Of course, because a new administration came in, and clearly hostility to this business was going to come. And I think the thesis was right. Is essentially this business got a lot of hostility, and you know, you'll see the revenue entirely flat-lined. I get to that in a second. It's entirely flat-lined the revenue, but I asked a question, and this was part of my thesis back then as a potential reason for having stayed in the stock, was the idea that they weren't going to do away with manufacturing credit, and they didn't. I had a conversation with AI about it. It looks like they didn't do away with the 11 cents manufacturing credit per AC watt of microinverter manufactured in the US, although they may have a harder time getting that credit past 2026 because it needs to be mostly made in the USA. They have 65% direct content rules, so we'll see if they can match that. That was a part of a big profit thesis for Enphase. But the point is, they have a tremendous manufacturing capacity. Back in the day, they had like a 20 million manufacturing capacity a year for these microinverters. The point of Enphase is to try to ever find more spots to include these microinverters. And on the face of it, their solution for AI appears to be a really good one. Let me get to that now. So I want to briefly, of course, talk about their AI thesis and why their solution makes a lot of sense. Of course, it's about micromanagement of the grid. It's about being able to match the load with the transformer. This transformer has to match the AI load. And the way that Enphase describes this in the presentation is, imagine every light in a big city, like San Francisco, going dark, and then back on, and then dark, and then back on, and that multiple times per second. And that's, of course, an AI data center. That's a 1 gigawatt data center. So their solution aims to solve the inefficiency of the current transformer situation and to come up with a new solution, which would be this intelligent power for AI that is just built on the back of inverters. And they have a roadmap here until 2028, talking about how their solution would eliminate a whole bunch of the value chain, literally all of what they call the gray space between the black space and the white space would be eliminated by the Enphase microinverter, which is essentially power management and better power management, better ability to match the loads that are put into the grid. And of course, this goes back to the history of Enphase. If you know anything about Enphase and inverters, microinverters, they are grid-connected inverters, i.e. they match whatever oscillation in the current that you have in your grid, they match it. And if they don't sense that your grid is on, the microinverter is not going to work, right? This is also why, for example, Enphase launched recently their balcony solar solution, which is you just plug in a solar panel into any plug of your house, and it matches the nature of the load in your house, and it can just reduce your electric bill just by being a plug-and-play solar panel. Having a plug-and-play solar panel, you plug it in, you match the electric bill. So they have a core semiconductor-based technology, which I would argue is second to none. It's really good at what they do. They are really good at what they do. They've been the gold standard in the microinverter sector, and they seem to have found a new solution. I haven't covered this talk in a while, but I'm happy to see them talking about the power module, which is really the true innovation of Enphase. These little boxes right there, and I'm particularly happy to see them to move into gallium nitride. So you may remember, I can't remember the name of that stock. I was covering that stock. It did a multi X to a small gallium nitride play. They're moving to gallium nitride switches and microinverters, thereby increasing the efficiency of IQ9s and whatever comes after IQ9 even more. And the key thesis of course of the Enphase inverter is to increase that efficiency and eventually match the efficiency of string inverters. And if you have next to no efficiency, you can easily make the switch between AC current, DC current, back to AC current, back to DC current, which is of course at the heart of AI. AI obviously using DC current, and obviously the grid still to this day having mostly AC current going on. And so there is a mismatch. There is power management that needs to happen. This is where the custom ASICs, the custom chip that Enphase has comes into play, and this is where the power electronics of Enphase, now powered by gallium nitride, which is a superior chemical that they use. If you ever get a GAN charger for your phone, you'll see how superior it is. It charges your phone so much faster. They are at the heart of their industry, and they are the best at their industry, no doubt about that. But when you look at their thesis, I love it. I think it's great. I understand why the stock bounced on that, because much of the market trades about news, but me, I like to see the revenue. And when I see the roadmap, I get concerned, because they talk about volume shipments in 2028. So this could have a very meaningful impact on revenue in 2028. That's a very, very long-term impact from now. That's like a long, long way from now. So they do the right thing for the business under the hood, but I am not sure it's going to have an impact on the revenue just yet. And unfortunately, I'm fine waiting, right? I'm fine waiting for revenue to ramp on a new idea if the stock is cheap. Unfortunately, because the growth of the stock is essentially gone, the stock is not looking cheap on my growth-adjusted basis whatsoever. It's absolutely not looking cheap. So let's look at valuation. The Enphase valuation, EV over GP over RG is a 19. It should really say NA right here, because I put them at 1% revenue growth. If you know my spreadsheet, whenever I put 1% revenue growth, that actually means they might have negative revenue growth. In the case of Enphase, analysts are predicting a negative 1% revenue growth. You can see gross margin is 27%, EBITDA margin is 13%, which is not very good. I mean, EBITDA margin, I don't really judge too much. EBITDA margin is fine. Gross margin is not fine. This is not very good. This is a business at a gross margin close to 50% back in the day. To me, Enphase is in a business that is in wait and see mode, and it's in a business that is in a survival mode and wait and see mode, and they're waiting until the next cyclical phase of solar. I will note that they did a really good job at paying off the debt. They paid off a bunch of debt when I updated the spreadsheet. I saw that. I will also note that they've been buying back some shares. This is a stock that used to be under heavy criticism for a lot of stock-based comp. They are slowly buying back the stock. And I hope they're not buying back the stock right now after a double in 3 weeks. If you look at the revenue, unfortunately, it fell from the highs. It's only half of what it used to do in revenue, and the revenue has just flatlined. There is no growth to be seen at Enphase, which is why they're developing this AI system, which it's the right thing to do because we're trying to find growth. Unfortunately, the core business is still mostly microinverters for solar. And unfortunately for them, the USA is still a major market, and there's tremendous headwinds for Enphase. So solar panels, trying to have a conversation with an AI as to what are the tariffs on solar panels, how they are. And we know there's kind of a blanket statement of 15%, actually 14.8%. So at the minimum, solar panels are 14.8. But from talking to the AI, depending on the classification, they have some sort of an anti-dumping penalty or something like that. Depending on the type of solar panel, you could be up to 50%. So of course, the equipment then went up in cost, all things else being equal. The equipment went up in cost in the US because of tariffs. And way worse than tariffs, of course, is the end of the IRA tax credit. You used to get a 30% tax credit on your install. It's entirely gone in the US. So a lot of people, have not reset the expectation of a tax credit, and so they're waiting for a new tax credit. They're in no hurry. And of course, the big hurt of Enphase, what hurt Enphase back then was the interest rising like crazy, because of course people, when they spend $30,000 on a new solar roof, they were expecting low interest rates like those we had in 2021. These interest rates are stubbornly high, and of course the news right now is that they may rise even more. So that's another headwind, is the interest rates. And the Tesla Powerwall competition. The Powerwall free competition, the way they did it by essentially throwing a string inverter with the battery. Okay, not as good as Enphase, not as decentralized power as Enphase. Enphase has more decentralized power, but they still have 6 sets of string. So instead of having one microinverter under each panel, with Tesla, you can get away with 4 panels and a string on the string inverter. So really reducing some of the issues that Enphase was solving when it first came out with the shadows on the roof and the roof shadows. And Powerwall, of course, the latest version, throwing that in for free, kind of in order to make it a no-brainer to choose a Tesla inverter and battery. And so that, I think the competition is real for Enphase, and I think the headwinds are even more real. And I really don't like the price action. I hate a stock that doubles in 3 weeks. I absolutely don't like a stock that doubles in 3 weeks. To me, this stock was in its valley of despair. And I think until we see the top line growth come back, I think the stock is going to keep being in valley of despair, because they're at no risk of bankruptcy. They paid back a bunch of their debt. They have a steady Eddie business. Their EBITDA margin profitable. They're a sleepy business. They're not at risk of bankruptcy, I don't think. But to me, we're not going to get the explosive growth in the revenue anytime soon. So the stock price doubling is really hype on the new solution here. But that's really hype. And of course, that's not the first time we see power companies talking about moving to AI, and we see their stock or their private equity valuation double, right? I can think of many, like Boom Supersonic. That was another example, developing like a supersonic flight. They were like, okay, we're going to put our jet engine into some turbine, some generator, and then boom, it was all over the news because they were switching to powering data centers. How many stocks are making that switch? Of course, EOSC is another one making that switch, and that's reflected in the stock price. But the timeline to actually hit the revenue, hit the books, that timeline is way down the road. So these are for the headwinds. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this video to be a Enphase bashing video. I'm just telling you what I think, especially for a stock that I used to love. When I used to cover the stock in 23, all of the planets were aligned. I mean, all of the planets were aligned. We had the IRA bill. We had tremendously miscalculated subsidies. We still had the NEM-free, the feed-in tariffs into the grid. They were still very high. When I first covered this stock, all of the tailwinds were there, but it has changed, right? It has changed since 2024. It's not the same as 2024. So that's just the way it is. You still have a few tailwinds. Energy crisis in Europe is still ongoing, and that's a tailwind for Enphase. I don't want to take that back. The rest of the world is not subject to the USA weakness, but this is still a business that does a lot of sales in the USA, and that's not enough. Yeah, Europe is not enough for Enphase. And then you have AI tailwind, and I think that's going to be real. I think they're doing the right thing for the revenue, but I also see 2028 as when volume shipments may happen, and this is also manufacturing. There's a lot of execution risk. So to me, Enphase the stock is back, but is the company back? Is it hype or is it real? To me, it feels unfortunately a little more like hype for now, and we will know in 2028, or rather I should say, it will not be hype anymore in 2028 when they actually bring in revenue for that. But for now, I think the market is, overreacting. That's kind of what I think. So hopefully you still liked the video. This was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me next. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.